Children, we were discussing the early phases of implantation. And when you talk about implantation, there are a lot more hidden agendas are inclusive in implantation, because we have discussed in our earlier lectures regarding early phases of implantation. We have seen what is the role of human chorionic gonadotropins to maintain the early pregnancy. And we have also, have discussed regarding the role of progesterone in continuing that early phase of implantation. Now question comes, what are the exact changes taking place at the site of implantation, and then how that process continues in the role or in the kind of gestation or gestation period. So what happens, students, at the site of implantation, basically, what is the site of implantation? It is a uterus, right? So at the site of implantation, lot of changes happens in the uterine wall. Which is that uterine wall we were discussing so many days? It is the endometrial wall. And this endometrial wall undergoes a kind of process what we have discussed as decidualization. That means it enlarges and it allows the path to invading embryo or invading implant, to just encroach itself or invade itself very nicely, substantially in the wall of the uterus. So how that decidualization is happening? That is happening due to the enhanced metabolic activity and production of tissue inhibitors, which are we call as metalloproteinases. There is also formation of cytokines, as the girl had said in her seminar a few days ago, extracellular matrix proteins, growth factors. So all these things modulate the invasion of the trophoblast and also influence functioning aspect of trophoblast, where at the site of implantation. So it is not, student, just the HCG or progesterone which we are talking about, the hormones of the pregnancy which are leading their roles, but there are extra factors playing their key fundamental roles, such as the metalloproteinases and cytokines, etc., etc. Now coming to the trophoblast cells. Now the role of the trophoblast cells. Now these trophoblast cells, which are the part of the embryo, still they are on the board, they also secrete certain components which are playing a role also in some aspects of the embryogenesis, or what we call as a organogenesis. Who's the embryo, of course, or the fetus? What is the organogenesis? It's development of different organs. So what are those component or key factors released by the trophoblast? Now trophoblast is first and foremost releasing angiogenic proteins. What are these angiogenic proteins, student? These are naturally occurring compounds. These are naturally occurring compounds, students, which are stimulating blood vessel growth, and their fundamental role, student, is organogenesis of the embryo. They are naturally occurring compounds and they are released by the trophoblast. Okay, so what is the importance of the blood vessel or a vascular endothelial growth factors that is also released by the trophoblast? See, all these are enhancing towards a process what we call as a placentalization or formation of the placenta. What is a placenta? By and large, you know that it is an organ, endocrine organ to be underlined, established during the process of the pregnancy, and it is controlling many factors which we'll discuss ahead between the maternal and the fetal blood vessels, underlying blood vessels. It is not just the mother and fetus what you have read so far in books. So these trophoblast cells, as I was discussing earlier, it releases angiogenic proteins such as vascular endothelial growth factors, platelet derived growth factors, that is called as PDGF, then BFGF, that is basic fibroblast growth factors, and all these factors stimulate the blood vessels to develop within the villi. We have discussed earlier, student, that villi, the cryptic form, the crypts through which this trophoblast is invading the endometrial wall of the uterus. So now there are only 3 tissues, student, which separate the fetal blood vessel from that of the maternal blood vessel. Which are those 3 tissues? Number 1, the endothelium of the fetal vessels in the villi. Okay, there is endothelium of the fetus, there is endothelium of the uterus also. When you say uterus, it's a maternal. When you say endothelium of the fetus, it's from the embryonic part. Okay, so 3 tissues, this is very important, that differs the 2 kinds of blood. One is the endothelium of the fetal vessels in the villi, 2 is a connective tissue, and 3 is a trophoblast itself. When these 3 tissues are concerned, student, the entire type of placentation is referred as hemochorial placentation. Now, what is this kind of placentation? It is found only in humans, and to some extent it is found in a rat and rabbit. Hemochorial placenta, student, is a placenta which we have. It is a, discoidal or a disc-shaped placenta. So another name to the hemochorial placenta is discoidal placenta, given by the virtue of its shape and size. By the virtue of the barriers, like how many barriers are present between the fetus and maternal side, it is referred as a hemochorial. So it is a placenta, student, which is or where the maternal blood is in direct contact with the fetus or a fetal trophoblast. So when such condition is there, that when there is a direct contact of the fetal and maternal blood, that is called as hemochorial placenta, which all human possess, and also the rats and the rabbit. Now, this particular mechanism asserts to make me one statement that in addition to the human chorionic gonadotrophin secretion, in addition to the progesterone, in addition to the growth factors which we have discussed in earlier lectures, and in addition to the secretion of some other hormones, it is the syncytial trophoblast, which is again you can see depicting on the board. This is a major site for the transportation of the oxygen and nutrients towards the fetus and removal of the nitrogenous metabolic waste matter from the placenta. Are you getting? So these substances are transmitted across the placenta through transcellular pathways. It is not as simple as you have read so far, that maternal and fetal blood. What are these pathways which are involved in transport of nutrients, oxygen, or elimination of unwanted nitrogenous metabolic waste? These transcellular pathways, student, include carrier-mediated transports such as immunoglobulin G and FCY receptors. Let me tell you what is it. It is a kind of process. When you talk about transcellular pathway, it is a kind of process where the small molecules move across the cell membrane. Very small molecules move across the cell membranes, but they have to use carrier proteins while performing this act. So when you say that there is a transport of food or oxygen from maternal and fetal blood, it is not as easy. There has to be transcellular pathways, and that's why the name is saying carrier mediated transcellular pathways, because carrier proteins are very important, and they are immunoglobulin G and FCY receptors. So they are very important when there is a transport of anything across the fetal and maternal blood. So then question comes, student, at the end, what is exactly a placenta? Yes, madam, you are saying it is a transitory endocrine organ. Yes, madam, you are saying it is maintaining the pregnancy. Yes, madam, you are saying it is, allowing the transcellular pathways, thereby there is a, I shall say, transport of lot of things, oxygen, nutrition, and many other, maybe some hormones between maternal and fetal tissue. But if somebody asks you, a non-endocrine person, what is a placenta? Then I would say it is a reproductive adaptation of a female. It's a reproductive adaptation to have a placenta, and it is also I should say fundamental part of the process what we call as a viviparity. If you are calling any body means any animal viviparous or animal which is exhibiting viviparity, then it has to have adaptation in the entire reproductive physiology during the gestation or during the pregnancy, during the implantation, and that is placenta. So it's a reproductive adaptation. And again, I come back to my statement number 1. Endocrinology is not just a study of endocrine glands, tissues, molecules, elements. It is also a study of non-endocrine organs, non-endocrine glands, and now here we see placenta as a temporary endocrine organ. So at a times, during the reproductive physiology, there is also a development of temporary reproductive organs, that what we call as a placenta.